Welcome to Fabric Monday. Today we'll talk about the new Notebook Connections feature. Let's understand the benefits of having connection objects inside the notebook. We worked until now without this kind of objects. How the connection objects bring benefits to the notebook? The point is, when the notebook needs to connect to something a bit different, like Azure SQL, like Azure Storage or something else, the secrets for this connection will not need to be inside the notebook. Instead of keeping the secret inside the notebook, we can use the connection object, and the connection object will hold the secret for us. The connection object supports Azure Keyvault. In this way, we can keep the secret safe in Azure Keyvault, and we can use safety principles. The connection can use a safety principle instead of using the authentication of the owner of the notebook. The notebook developer may not know the connection secret. Of course, in many scenarios, there is only one developer managing this. But in bigger scenarios, you may have someone responsible to manage the connection objects and someone responsible to develop the notebooks. It's a possible scenario that the one managing the connections will not disclose the connection authentication to the one developing the notebooks. This will work without any problem. Let's see how this works. Here I have an Azure SQL database. I can see here the server name, the database name. I'll make a connection to this Azure SQL database. This will be the target of my connection. In Microsoft Fabric portal, I'll click in Settings. Here in Settings, I'll go to Manage Connections and Gateways. Here in the Manage Connections, I'll create a new connection. I'll ask to create a new connection and configure the connection to my Azure SQL. It's a cloud server, connection type, SQL Server. Name of my connection. Let's call Test Adventure. The server. I passed the server copied from the Azure. I will also pass the database name copied from Azure. Then I need to define the authentication method. Mind the possibilities. I can use a safety principle to authenticate to this database. I can use a Workspace identity to authenticate to this database. Or I can simply use basic. Of course, it's not the safest one, but it's a possibility. And we can link the secrets of this connection to Keyvault. This is a possible link that we can make in this connection. Let me type the username and password. And now there is a new option here in the creation of the connection. Allow code first artifacts like notebooks to access this connection. This is what will allow a notebook to access this connection to Azure SQL. So I'll click yes and create a connection. That's it. My connection is created. Now we need to test this connection inside the notebook. I'm at the notebook now. The new feature appears in the Explorer. We had data items before, we had resources before. Now we have the connections inside the notebook. So we can go to connections. All the connections created and that allow access to notebooks will appear here. Global permission. The notebook has permission to access this connector. And the user creating the notebook needs also to have permission to access the connection. The one managing the connection needs to give permission to the user, the developer creating the notebook, to access the connection. Then from here, we can use an option to connect. Once I select connect, the connection was included in the current notebook, so the connection moves from the global permissions, global connection that we are not using in this notebook, to current notebook. This is the connection I am using in this notebook. Now the connection is inserted in the notebook. I can click on the three dots. Now I choose Add as a code cell. This will create the code to access this connection. Add as a code cell. And here it is. The code to access this connection in fact involves retrieving the connection information from the connection object. It keeps the connection object in the code and retrieves the connection information from the connection object. Use this connection information to actually connect to the source. In this case, it's a SQL source. The connection is using PyODBC to connect to the Azure SQL. And I can make a select, execute a select, and get the information, get the data. Of course, I can adapt this basic code to execute any SQL query I would like to execute. But in this example, this SQL query is reading the list of tables from the database using the information schema tables. Then it lists the tables in the database and how many rows are there in each table. Let's test this code. Execute. The notebook finished the execution. We can see the list of the tables in the database and the records in the table customers. All the records in the table customers. The code selected the table customers as the one to show all the records. Of course, this is only a sample code. The important is the fact that I'm using the connection object in the notebook without the advantage of this use and using it with information. I can adapt the retrieval code in any way I would like. Thank you very much for watching and see you next week.